Shanti, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the meditation today. I'll be talking about awakening the creative principle. Before I begin, I would like to ask if you could come to just a comfortable meditative posture, meditative position, and I will start with a short prayer. May the infinite Lord of life, of love and of laughter, bless you at this moment. May each cell of your being and each petal of your mind be touched, be healed, be harmonized. May vim, vigor, and vitality be yours. May love and laughter be yours. May you truly find that which you seek, and may you find that which you seek surely, swiftly, and most harmoniously. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. When we're very young in life, we find that there are boundaries. And that includes everyone. Each of us realizes that there's certain places we can't go or we shouldn't go. A child wants to run out into the street, and if the child has good parents, the parents become a boundary and stop the child from running out in the street. Now, the child would look at that as something negative, as a punishment. The child wants its freedom. But the truth is, the boundary isn't really a boundary in that case, it's a guideline. And in yoga, we would say that all boundaries are really just guidelines. They're guardrails. We're moving down the highway of life. And as we move down the highway of life, there are guardrails that we find here and there. And the guide rails aren't there to stop us from going where we want to go, they're to stop us from being injured. And so we have two ways of looking at it. These boundaries that we encounter, we can look at them either as guidelines or we can look at them as walls, stopping us from getting something that we want. When you're dealing with your job, there's certain requirements that you have. Each employer has guidelines and rules set up. You may not like the guidelines and rules, but they're there and you must obey them. There's always a reason for the guidelines. In marriage, the spouse has certain rules and regulations, implied or otherwise, as we move through the marriage. And we can look at those requirements that are made by the spouse as walls, as obstacles, or we can look at them as guidelines. And of course, as you work through life, as you work through life in your job, as you work through life in your marriage, as you work through life in all relationships, you realize that there's a give and take. Sometimes you have to give, sometimes you have to take. There's a give and take. I remember when I was very young, there was an old saying that if you wanted a successful marriage, that what you had to do was you had to have a 50-50 marriage. In other words, the implication was you give 50% and you take 50%. I found out that as I looked from one marriage to another marriage to another, from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship, as I would watch my friends and coworkers and people, neighbors and people that I would deal with. Work towards this objective of I'll give 50% and then I'll take 50%. And the truth is, what I've found is that doesn't work. And that's not what the guideline is. What you have to do is you have to give 100%. And you have to take peanuts. And for the relationship, for any relationship to work, you really have to do that. You have to give 100%, not 50%. It's not even 75%. It's not 90%. You have to give 100%. You might say, well, that doesn't sound fair. The problem is, the reality is, it's not a problem, but the reality is, if we think we're giving 100%, we're probably giving 10%. And so that's what's happening. So when I say you give 100%, what I'm really saying is it feels like you're giving 100%. You ever have to say you're sorry, to realize that you're wrong and say to your spouse, oh, honey, I was wrong. That's giving 100%. And mean it. To say it and mean it. To say it and not mean it is something else. But to come to the realization, oh yeah, I really did do something that was not the right thing to do. So when you say, honey, really, I'm sorry. I really was wrong. And you have to mean it, and not only mean it with the words, and your words have to express it, but the actions have to follow. And the actions are really what's important. People are very perceptive, and they can tell when you say something, whether you mean it or not, by how you act after you say what you say. What's the word? Hypocritical. I heard listening to a talk station the other day, and the person on the station said, the truth is, in some way, shape, or form, we're all hypocritical. And I tend to think that that's true. There are certain things that we will tell other people, this is the way you should act, this is the way you should perform, this is what you should do, and we don't do it ourselves. It's life. There's a psychology there that goes along with that, and I don't want to go too far into it, but it's true. We all have our limitations. We have the walls, we have the guide rails, the guidelines in everything we think, that we're saying, that we're doing. And a lot of times we'll say to someone, oh, you shouldn't smoke. And we know it, and we really mean it. Oh, you shouldn't get angry. How about that? You shouldn't get, and we know we shouldn't get angry. It's not healthy, and anger destroys relationships. I don't believe anger has anything constructive to it at its root level. At the root level, it's very destructive. If there's anything positive about it, I have to be yogic here. If there's anything positive about it, it's what you learn in the experience when you become angry, and then the fight ensues and the battle ensues, and how do they say it? Who's a bloodier mess, you or your enemy? The point is, it's always just a mess when the anger erupts. And the positive side of it is one that you have to have the realization that you ran into a wall. That's life. And what can you learn from it? It's okay to get angry. It happens. We're human. We're not perfect. I think Kriyananda would say it's okay if you stumble and fall and you find yourself flat on your face. But you can't just lie there and cry and complain about how mean the world is and how terrible and awful it is. You stumble and you fall and you're down on the ground, and your next step is to gather yourself together, lift yourself up, stand up, and then start walking again. And as you walk, you reflect and think about what happened in whatever the altercation was and whatever the difficulty was there, what caused the pain. And if you don't do that, if you don't reflect on it, if you don't understand what caused it, what caused the problem, what caused the difficulty, you've really wasted part of your life. I suppose in trying to keep with the theme of this afternoon, it would be the destructive principle that you've just gone through. You want to change that into a creative principle by saying to yourself, what happened, and unemotionally and almost to some degree unintellectually, from a wisdom standpoint, which goes beyond the intellect, but from some wisdom awareness that we have about what has occurred and what is going on, come to realize, what did I do wrong? What did the other person do wrong? What did I do right? What did the other person do right? Taking the whole picture, putting it together, and come to a realization, what was that all about, and what did I learn from the experience? And then after you've done that, you step back, you turn around, and you go back to the person and say, I goofed, I shouldn't have done that. And however you do it. You make the apology and you move forward in life. If I take and kind of summarize or try and summarize this opening thought that I have for the meditation today, I'm calling these things boundaries and guidelines and guardrails and walls and things like that. But in yoga, we have really a term for all of these things that we experience in life. And the term is karma. And what karma is, it's a lot of things. There's many ways to look at it and many ways to talk about it. And I think I've been studying at the temple for decades and decades and still trying to grapple with and understand the full measure of what karma is really all about. But at least in one sense, karma is the boundaries. That's these things that have come into our life, and they're there because somehow, some way, in a previous experience, previously in this life, previously in a previous life, in a previous existence, whatever happened, you had an experience that was related to what you're going through now, and it creates this karmic event. And what your purpose is to try and understand, to try and determine, again, I'm just repeating myself, but what happened in this event that stood out in our life? Why did it happen, and how do I prevent it from happening again? If I don't somehow grapple with that. How do I stop it from happening again? I've really manifested the destructive principle in that event. If I think about it, reflect on it, and say, well, this is what I could have done better, now I'm developing the creative principle that exists within us. And it's that gift that we have of consciousness and conscious awareness and being able to look at life and understand and start to understand or work with life and understand it better, so that next time we run into this situation, and for most of us, these events that occur in our life, these guardrails that occur, these obstacles that occur, or these guidelines that occur in our life are repetitive. They're happening over and over and over again. And I think the normal reaction, what a lot of people do, is they're saying, in fact, I don't think I know, a lot of people are saying, what did they do wrong? Or not what did they do, you know what they did wrong. You're keenly aware that they did this or that or whatever it was, and that's what got you upset. That's what created the difficulty in your life. So you're aware of it. And so what I hear over and over again, they're the problem. It's their fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. It's their fault. And that attitude doesn't produce any growth. There's no growth there. It's like I said, in every interaction that occurs with another person, whoever that other person might be, they're never 100% wrong. And they're never 100% right. You're never 100% wrong. You're never 100% right. And there's a word we use for this. I called it reflection earlier. I said it was reflection. And I said, you walk through life and you think about these things and then you reflect on them. Well, in yoga, what we say is each evening you should reflect on what happened during the day. It's called tarka is the word, and probably many of you or most of you have already heard the word and are aware of it, but it's important. Before you go to bed at night, you sit on the bed, maybe relax for a few moments and think about the day. Think about the good things that happened. Think about the bad things that happened. And of course, I say with the bad things that happened, you think about how could I have done something to make them not so bad. The good things that happened, what do I do to make them better? And how do I make them so much better that I've learned so much that I'm able to share those experiences with someone else and maybe help them expand their life, expand their awareness, expand their consciousness, which is, I think, the ultimate theme of what I want to get to today, which is, as part of the creative principle, it is helping other people. That message has to come through in, at least for me, in the meditations, the talks, the discussions that I have, is how do I help someone else? If they're in pain, if they're suffering, if there's some difficult situation that they're dealing with. And with those thoughts, I'd like to stop for just for a couple of minutes and move into a meditation, and then I'm gonna play a mantra for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. We'll have a mantra, and it's just to stop, think, reflect on what I've meditated with you for the past 15 or 20 minutes, whatever it's been, and enjoy the music. If you want to chant, you can. It's a Ganesh mantra. when I'm talking about the creative principle, it's been creating things, and Ganesh has to do with removing the obstacles, and I think that's what I've been talking about this so far this afternoon, and that's why I chose the Ganesh mantra, because it seemed to fit in with this idea of removing obstacles, in which Sri Ganesh, Lord Ganesh, is all about. It's always nice after chanting or listening to a mantra to stop and sit in silence for a few moments before moving on. I've been talking about the creative principle and how in life we all are aware that as we move through life, we run into various obstacles. And as we run into these obstacles, there's two ways to look at it. They can be something that's negative and create maybe a resentment or a hostility within us, feelings of hostility, or we can look at these obstacles as they occur in life as, here's an opportunity to learn. Difficult as it might be, it's an obstacle to learn. And I've also talked about tarka and reflection, and each evening after you've gone through the day and a lot of things have happened during the day, to reflect on those things. And then I was thinking it was, it's in preparation of going to sleep. You sit on the bed and reflect for a few minutes. And then as you lie down and start preparing yourself for your new life, your new dream life that you're going to be moving into shortly, start to take into the that dream state, that sleep state, something what I would call possibility thinking. To me, I heard someone say at one time that possibility thinking is the greatest healing technique. And I thought, there's something to that there. That's an important idea or a thought that's worth grabbing onto and thinking about. Possibility thinking is taking a situation that you're in, any situation, it doesn't matter what it is, some situation that you're in, that you're working with. You might be trying to create something. Maybe you have a job that you're entering into. Maybe you have a new marriage that you're moving into. You're trying a new recipe to cook a new meal. Maybe you have a project around the house that you're working on. And the normal thing to do, I think the natural thing, obviously, is to start thinking about what are the tools that I need? What are the ingredients that I need? What do I need to take this project that I'm working on it and start creating or building that project, whatever it is. It could be a mental project, it could be a physical project, or a personal project. Again, for most of us, these personal interactions are what are key in our life. And so I kind of keep moving back towards that, these relationships and the personal relationships. But what you do or want to do is to, as you go to sleep at night, put yourself into a situation so that you move into a dream state where you're solving the problem by moving into a position or a place that you want to be. Maybe on your job, you have come to encounter something, the boss gives you something to work on. And it's particularly challenging. It's maybe even something that you don't really necessarily want to do or you've never done before. And so you start out a little bit at a loss. Well, now what do I do? Where do I start? Well, start thinking about it. Think about it in the evening when you go home. You get the project. When you go home, think about it and think about, well, what am I going to do to start solving that problem? And start solving it when you move into the dream state. When you're conscious reflecting on the day, reflecting on the events, whatever they might be. You want to move into the dream state, and as you're moving into the dream state, you're thinking, here's how I'm going to solve the problem. And if you can do that, you've done this kind of a technique that I'm calling of possibility thinking. And you can even go so far as to take it into health if there's some kind of a health issue. This is not a medical statement. This is a spiritual statement. So I'm not talking about I'm not talking about this in terms of being a doctor or anything like that, but simply that I think we know that if we can create a positive attitude, some health issue that we have that we're working with, if we can somehow spin it into a positive attitude and take that positive attitude and again bring it into the dream state, it will help us. As we're sleeping at night, it'll kind of, if I can say it this way, penetrate into our subconscious mind. It'll penetrate into every cell of our being that we have. This idea of, okay, the way I'm going to solve my problem, the way I'm going to feel better, feel happier, feel healthier, feel more harmonious is by thinking a positive thought and thinking, tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to feel better. And then when you wake up, you do feel a little better if you're able to carry it into the dream state. You've had a fight with your spouse, and at the end of the day, you say, okay, it's over with. I'm going to stop. The fight's over with. The difficulty is over with. And now I'm going to be happy. And I'm going to take that happiness with the spouse into the sleep state, into the dream state. You have a project at work that you're working on, and you take it into the dream state. What are you gonna? How can I possibly, or how do I start solving the problem that I have that I'm working on? And again, I maybe not giving specific examples because I'm trying to keep it generalized. Each person has their own projects that they're working on, their own patterns that they have to deal with. But I suppose the key thing that I'm talking about this afternoon is that you want to have a positive attitude towards life, a positive attitude towards people, and a positive attitude towards everything that's happening in your life. No matter if it's good or if it's bad. If it's good, have a better attitude. If it's bad, change it into a positive attitude. Anything you could do moving in that direction will help you. Again, it's the creative principle. And so the creative principle, ultimately, the ultimate creative principle that I'm talking about, that I'm suggesting that I'm working with you on this afternoon is your mind is the emperor. Your mind is supreme. And your mind can work miracles. It really can. It can work miracles for you. And your mind can help solve any problem that you have. You just have to work with it. And so now, after talking about working with your spouse, after talking about working with your co-workers, with your neighbors and everything else, really, where does it come down to? What's the ultimate relationship that you have to work with? And that is yourself. It's between you and me, Lord. And that's the toughest one, dealing with yourself. Some of us have maybe little bigger ego, and so dealing with ourselves, we like to pat ourselves on the back. Oh yeah, I don't have any regrets in life. Every once in a while, I'll hear someone say that. It's hard for me to understand that. I look back and reflect on my life, and I see all sorts of opportunities for improvement and all sorts of things that need improvement. Um, but then there's the other side of the picture, and for a lot of people, maybe most of us, the opposite is true. We tend to have a negative self-image, and though we walk through life and we smile and we laugh and we talk to people and we talk about our accomplishments and we talk about what we've done in a positive term, for a lot of us, back in the back of our mind, what we're thinking to ourselves is, I'm really not that great. I'm really not that good. And even it goes to the point where we say to ourselves, boy, maybe I did do everything wrong. Remember before I said, we're never 100% right, but we're never 100% wrong. There's a tendency for us to get to that point where we start to say, oh yeah, gee, I really do everything wrong. If I want to really be honest with myself, and that's not true. And so we have this guilt complex that we wind up dealing with, and that's not good. We really shouldn't have the guilt there. The guilt actually creates walls. The guilt actually creates further problems. I go back to the beginning. So what am I saying is, as you deal with yourself, as you deal with life, your ultimate challenge is to deal with yourself and deal with the thoughts that you're thinking, and taking any negative thoughts that you have, and it doesn't matter what the negative thoughts are, creatively trying to turn them into positive thoughts. Periodically I talk to people and I tell them that I had gotten to that point where I was pretty negative on myself and and thinking, gosh, I can't do anything right. And when that happened, what I came to realize, that attitude was actually being projected from me to other people, and other people could feel the negativity there. I could almost feel it like it bouncing off my negativity bouncing off of them and coming back, and seeing it from a different perspective, what they say and how they treat me. I'm saying, oh wow. I had this realization that they reacted to what I was saying to them or what I was doing in the interaction, and it wasn't a good thing. And so I developed what I call an ARP program. That's ARP, Attitude Readjustment Program. And so I got to the point where I said to myself, from now on, it's okay if I think a negative thought. If I want to think something negative, if I think something critical, I deal with someone and I'm going to deal with them in a critical way, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. But for whatever that negative thought was that I had to think something positive. If I said to someone something negative about someone, I had to say something positive. In my mind, I was saying that to myself. That's what my approach toward life was going to be from now on. If I criticized somebody for something, I had to say something positive about that. If I said it verbally, if I thought something negative about someone, I had to think something positive about someone. And for me personally, after I started doing that, I felt my life getting better and better and better and better. And I actually reached a certain point where I started to say, why even think anything negative about other people? Now, it's hard to do that 100% of the time. It just is. Again, life is life, and it kind of comes at you, and you feel the negativity coming at you, and so it's a very difficult, it's a seemingly impossible task to turn that into something positive. Um, but I think it's really necessary. I think it's important, and I think it's necessary. And it's really the summary of what I've been talking about today, what I've been meditating with you about today, and it's I think the culmination of what I would call the creative principle, which is whenever you can, however you can, in any situation you can, take any of the negativity and with your creative consciousness, that creativity that exists within you, make something positive out of it. You know, forgive me, they make lemonade out of lemons. It's an old saying, but it's an important saying, and it's something that's meaningful and is an old saying that's still around because it has value to it. It has great value to it. So think a new thought. If I were to try and put it into the pithy statement, that's what's important. What's the pithy statement? The summary of what I'm really talking about today and dealing with the creative principle. And that answer is, or the answer to that question is, think a new thought. What your purpose in life, what my purpose in life is to think a new thought. Put yourself into a situation and then project yourself. If the situation is a negative situation, project yourself by thinking a new thought, how to get out of that negativity, how to get out of that difficulty and move to a positive state. And as you do that, you think a new thought each day. Each day you have a new idea, a new thought, or you think of an old thought in a new way. And with that, I think that you will find yourself growing and moving with more effort, with more diligence, with more happiness towards whatever goal or goals you're trying to accomplish. And getting closer and closer to those goals that you're trying to accomplish. And with that, I'd like to close the meditation. I appreciate your attention and hope to meditate with you again at some time in the near future. Shanti.